Hello, hello, and welcome to Millennial Notebook. My name is Stella,
And my name is Emily.
and here we talk about living life as a millennial in the modern age.
Get comfy, grab your notebook, and let's enjoy the ride together.
Hi, everyone. I hope you're having a great day. I feel like I ask this question every single time. Let me change it up next time for you guys.
You don't have to change anything. I love it. Your sweet, sultry voice.
Whatever. So, we want to try something new before we jump into our episode today. So, we wanted to talk about something that, like a really fun topic, and what that is Love is Blind.
Yes. The American season 2.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think we did talk a little bit about Love is Blind Japan. So now
We
we're
did.
talking about the American version and season 2. And the reason for this is because for some reason Netflix recommended and played season 2 for me before season 1. And I was assuming that was I actually thought it was season 1. So because
Oh.
that's the first thing that Netflix played for me.
Right.
So yeah, so we will talk about the reunion. So spoiler
Oh.
alert, we will put the timestamp for you to skip this if you don't want spoilers. Okay. Yeah, so just check the show notes for the timestamp on when we start our discussion on living life as a young adult in these times.
Oh, yes.
Anyway,
It's gonna be so good.
tell me, what do you think about it, Emily?
Okay, so season 2 was amazing. I can't really compare it to season 1 because you haven't seen season 1. But very interesting pairings, really interesting people. I'd say this season the drama was like really flat though. And the weddings were like hit me like a ton of bricks. I don't know if it was the editing or something, but like there were so many couples that said no that I'm like, what? And I was like, oh yeah, this person's totally gonna say yes. And they just turned around and said no. And I'm like, what? I was not expecting it. So yeah, that last episode, like, just I was shocked. I had my drawer open. I was crying. I was like, I don't understand. Yeah, but like, I don't know. I feel like couples were gonna have more drama than they did, or like a lot of the drama was off the episode. Like, I don't know. What did you think of it? Like, maybe compare it to the Japanese one because it's what you've seen. Like, what did you think of it?
I found the parts where people were really concerned about ethnicity and religion as interesting because I never really had to think too hard about that because I've been living like most of my my life was spent first in the Philippines and then Japan, right? So almost half for both countries. Or that's not fair to say. It's still longer the Philippines. And I would only visit the States for about a month at a time. So it's not as if like my mindset is like, oh, I'm going to be living here forever. So it's not as if I seriously dated in the States either. So I found that very interesting because even in Japan, it wasn't a thing, right? People weren't asking, oh, what's your hair color or are you white or no, nothing about ethnicity popped up aside from like if their name sounded a little bit like foreign, and then the first question would be like, oh, are you half? Or
Yeah, there was obviously questions of half, and then a couple of them connected on being half, which I thought was kind of cute.
Yeah.
But I think in America, it's such a. I found it really interesting that the same. I wouldn't say the same race couples, but like the Indians paired together, the black. I don't know how many there were like in the entire cast, but like there was a black couple, and then there was the like half Mexican or Latino couple. I thought that was really interesting that they connected, and I wonder if that's just like a shared experience thing of like they felt that deeper connection because of their lived experiences, and I think it goes to show it's kind of hard to like that bonds people, I guess. So
that's a very interesting point.
I
definitely found the American one a little bit more dramatic.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I don't know if that's the way the like American TV is like set up to be, but I wonder if it's also like the cultural aspect of it, right? And so many things happening around, because I feel like a little Americans are a little bit more outspoken than Japanese people.
Yeah. I agree. Like it with American culture, it is very much like they are more outspoken. Maybe it's a Western thing, but I do feel like it's an American thing of being like really outspoken and being really loud about. No, I don't want to say loud about your opinion, but like, yeah, like there's a huge juxtaposition between the Japanese one and the American one.
Yeah.
But it'd be like, I can't say that that's like that it is just Americans, because if you watch things like Love at First Sight, which is when they get married, like on their wedding day, which is when they meet each other on their wedding day, sorry. And like there's tons of drama in that, and it's a very simple same thing. And there's been a New Zealand one and an Australian one as well of that, and it's very much the same. There's lots of drama, lots of screaming and fighting, and I think it is just a cultural difference between like Japanese being a little bit more reserved and maybe holding back their feelings and not wanting to upset people with their feelings. And I think in a way it I don't want to say that the Japanese one wasn't entertaining. Like there definitely wasn't those dramatic moments which make a show, like a reality TV show, entertaining. But I guess it was more of like a thoughtful experience to watch, you know. You like it was a thoughtful thing, and like watching a relationship derail because of a lack of communication, as opposed to watching a relationship derail because of explosive communication, you know.
Yeah, or like just not even explosive, but just like mismatching communication styles. And
and there was I guess there was so many more styles of communication. I would almost say like the American one, I feel like because they are more open to talking about their feelings and communication, and more open to other people's styles of communication, that the relationships worked because they were trying to fix things. Whereas I feel like maybe in the Japanese one, they were perhaps too reserved with their feelings, and they weren't able to communicate well enough to sort of get past a lot of the issues. But I don't know, it's hard to say.
I mean, because I'm pretty sure there were also kind of like personal reasons for some of the, like what my Japanese friend commented, right, that some of the guys didn't seem like they were actually serious about getting married, about the concept of love is blind, that you're actually gonna get married. But anyway,
I feel like the Japanese production team also didn't push as hard as the American team.
That you're actually going to get married. Did you
like you're
realize
actually
that?
You cannot give your answer even if you knew like prior to the wedding. Like you're not allowed to give the answer until the wedding. Like you have to go through with it. And they kind of they reference that somewhere, either the reunion or something like that. But like in the Japanese one, a lot of the couples derailed throughout the journey, and I think there was what, 3 weddings in the end, and one of them didn't even go ahead. Like the guy came in right before the wedding and was like, this ain't gonna work, and she's like, okay. I don't know. Oh man, it's such an interesting show. I really like it. I like the idea of,
can I speak specifically about people though? Like I really want to comment of this. Like I was so of like, so 2 people I want to comment about. One, Shane, kind of like, why is he so twitchy? Like,
okay. You know what's hilarious, right? And because we spoke about this in last episode,
what if
I talked about ADHD, right?
Is that, do you think he has it?
Yeah, he said he has it. He said it on a podcast, and I was when I was watching him, I'm like, oh, that boy's got ADHD. Like he's so twitchy, he's so nervous, has like explosive aggression, and like I was like, that boy has ADHD. I'm like, girl, you can't do that. You can't say everyone has it. And then he talks about it on a podcast. He's like, oh, yeah, so everyone thinks I'm on drugs and stuff. I'm not. I have severe ADHD, so I'm real twitchy and stuff. And I'm like,
that's good. I mean, because, I did read about that, like because people noticed it much more during the reunion. I actually noticed it throughout the series.
He was so uncomfortable.
Yeah, and I wasn't sure what it was, where it was coming from. I didn't want to judge, right? So I'm glad you clarified that, because I didn't want to, because he seemed like a good person based off of what his partner, I forgot her name,
Natalie?
Natalie, based
Yeah,
off of
yeah.
Natalie's impressions. And I actually, from how I perceive Natalie on the show, I think I trust that she has good judgment. So at first, as much as I didn't like
Yeah.
Shane as much, I was the fact that she
Yeah.
continued to like him even until the very end, where up until that point where he did something that she couldn't really forgive at that moment.
Yeah. And I think,
Um,
I think he was just, I mean, it makes so much sense. Like, when you look at the psychology of ADHD, like, it makes so much sense. And I can understand what kind of happened between them. Or at least I can perceive what happened between them.
Yeah.
And I can sort of, there was something, like, I don't know, there's something about their relationship was really weird. I didn't think she was going to go for him.
Me too.
Um,
Well, I didn't
I don't
expect
know.
that at the start, but she was kind of decided, right? He was pretty decided from the get go. What I didn't expect was Shane going for Natalie, because Shayna was also there, right?
Yeah, and
And I don't know,
think
their
they would've
chemistry was
made
pretty good.
I think they would have made a good couple. I guess he just wanted that deeper emotional connection.
Versus like what seemed like just a passionate kind of
yeah,
possibly.
which could have been more lusty and wasn't really a long term thing.
Yeah.
But Shayna was kind of shady.
She was.
She's like, this is my man, and I'm gonna go for it no matter what. And like, I don't really care about Natalie. And it kind of came off that way, but
Yeah.
she was. I mean, she wasn't like remorseful in the reunion, but she owned up to being like, okay, I was probably out of line, and I kind of did a few things that were a bit like
Yeah.
in the name of love. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really found it funny how she would like aside from you saying she's shady, like the fact that in the reunion she would like squint her eyes at everyone. And I'm just like
she squints when she's thinking, and it's like it looks like you're
Doubting.
skeptical of everything.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
she's just
yeah.
thinking.
I
She's
know,
just kinda
I
like,
know.
big squinty eyes.
I'm just like, oh my gosh, she looks like she's doubting every single person as she does that. So I was just like, this
Yeah.
girl is not like she's not
Yeah.
either she's not made for television just because like people will hate on those habits, which I don't know, like probably don't have any they probably don't have any negative like she's probably not even a terrible person, I bet, right? It's
Yeah.
just that, people kind of
Well, they might perceive it that way. That
Yeah,
they're
yeah,
like,
so-
"Are you judging everybody?" She's like, no, I was just thinking.
I know,
I
right?
was thinking with my face.
Actually, I wanted to
Yeah.
talk about Shake as well, but I feel like we're gonna eat up a whole episode of this. So let's talk
we
about
could
this next.
we could, an entire episode on Shake. That
Yeah.
was just,
I know.
yeah, wow,
So-
interesting.
So that's Love Is Blind season 2 discussion part 1. Listen
I
to
can't wait to discuss season 1.
yeah, let's talk about part 2 on another episode. Maybe the next episode we can even yeah.
Oh,
Anyway,
we could.
so let's
so what's
just
your topic?
yes, the topic for today. So here we are. I wanted to talk about our struggles living as young adults in these times. Basically, a lot of millennials right now are experiencing similar things, and because we are a full generation, and so I think it would be a very interesting topic to discuss with what we're going through. And for this particular episode, this is going to be part 1 of a 2-part series. We are going to focus on financial struggles and the economy, and
Yep.
how the economy and generally maybe the job market, and as well as all of the facets of living and having to pay for stuff. So discussing that and how we feel about that and our experiences. So why
Yep.
don't we just dive in then? So
Oh, hit me hard. What do you got?
okay, first question. So financial struggles and how it's forcing people to make a choice. Among the many choices that we could have had, perhaps if we lived in our parents' generation, right? So what do you think about that one? Like, how do you feel about having to make very serious choices based off of like financial necessity? And this is a very broad topic, but for you, what do you think you kind of had to
Like, what sacrifices am I making
yes.
because of my financial situation?
yes
Oh, so many. Okay, well, one of the biggest things at the moment in my life is Jonathan with his job, he had to move out of the house. He's now living, he comes home on the weekends, but he lives during the week out of town, and he is living and flatting with a friend, and he's still an hour away from his job. So the school that he works at is 2 hours away from Christchurch. He is living an hour out of Christchurch and still has to commute an hour to get to his job. So it's kind of like he's an hour closer to his job. But he had to do that because if he was to live any closer to where he worked, he would have been paying as much as I do in rent. So between us, we would have been spending, if we joined our incomes, we would have been spending like 60% of our income just on housing expenses, which is a lot of money. So instead, he's paying a little bit less on rent. I don't see him during the week. That's I guess that's a sacrifice we've had to make. But it's really important that he had the job, because if he didn't get the job, he'd be stifling his career. If he couldn't get his career off the ground, we'd be financially on the back foot forever, essentially. Because he's getting to his 30s now, and like getting an entry-level job when you're past 30 is really hard, actually.
I can imagine.
Like, it's, people kind of look at you like, what's wrong with you? What happened? Most people expect by the time you're 30, you've at least put your foot in one career. Some people will sidestep, but they've been like, oh, but I've worked for the last 10 years as this or something like that. And then I retrained to do something. So I guess that's one of the big sacrifices that we've had to make. And I guess just with the way things are, like, my big sacrifice to have the house to ourselves on the weekend, and to have the house to myself during the week, to keep my cat happy because he's not really a people person, to kind of keep the status quo as best as possible. I'm fronting all of the house expenses, so I pay my entirety of rent, and I pay all my food, I pay all my power, and I pay all of my utilities, internet, etc. So that comes to about 65 to 70% of my income is just on that. And then with 30% of my income, and I don't get paid, like, I'm like mid to average, like, I'm not minimum wage by any means, but like, I'm really struggling. Like, it is not easy to be in the situation that I'm in. Like, an extra $10 on my rent, like, that's an extra $20 a pay that I'd be like, I'm not going out buying like clothes every weekend. My mum might come up and splurge a little bit, and like that's when I get some new clothes and stuff. But like, I don't spend money on luxuries like clothes. Jonathan and I spend that extra money that we have to go out on dates. Like, that's kind of our connection time. It's really important to us. If I'm spending money anywhere more, it's food, and because food expenses here are just through the roof. So that's kind of my situation. I'm making a lot of sacrifices. I can barely save with my I'm just really thankful that Jonathan has a job, to be fair. Like, it's really shitty to be like I'm really happy he has a job. And like, that's the most important thing. But like, this year is just kind of like, we were hoping we could save a bit of money, or like, but we're just like making ends meet. And I know it's for the future, but it still sucks. Like, sometimes you just want to go out and buy yourself something nice, and like, and then when you work all week and you literally can't afford to do that. It's you have to find, I think it's taught me that I have to find other things to find happiness in.
That's for sure.
So yeah.
Aside from
So it's like spending time with my cat, or going out for a meal with Jonathan. Like, that's the sort of
and
thing.
I think to some degree that's a gift, but also just like, why do we have to go through this to be able to realize that, right? Also, like, it shouldn't, like, people should be able to afford like basic necessities. So it's kind of sad that people who are actually working aren't able to afford that.
It scares me because I am someone who isn't working minimum wage and
already,
like,
right? Yeah, I know, and I
have a pretty, like, I mean, I should be getting paid more for what I do, but at the same time, like, people get paid half what I do, and they try and make, with children, they try and make ends meet, and I don't know how they do it. Like,
so actually on scary. On that note, like, that's one of the few things, actually the many things that surprised me about Japan as well, because despite it being like the image is that they're mostly people are of middle class, right? And
Yeah.
it's because of their taxation system as well. But um, like coming here to work, I realized that the salaries are just really low. And because I have the benefit of being able to speak English, and also like I already had a little bit of work experience coming in, I mean, I was able to kind of go above a little bit above what the usual starting salary is for average companies. And what I mean by average companies is that they're not very big. So I was able to match up. So if you're working in a very big company, so even your entry level salary is going to be decent, right? Decent. But there are so many like smaller companies that give you much less, sometimes half, as you've mentioned. And I computed my expenses and did my best to like see what is my kind of minimum to feel like I am living a decent life.
Yeah.
And that's the minimum wage. I think that's a good way to label that kind of lower tier salary. But like even the lower tier salaries, and this is salary, right? You don't, it's not even like a super minimum wage in a sense that you're being paid per hour. But
Yeah.
it's just, I don't know how they do it, because I mean, so one of the ways to do that is to like lower your rent, right? And
Yeah.
that's one of the things that a lot of people give up, right? So a lot of them
Yeah.
live in the burbs.
Yeah.
Some people live in share houses.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, so
I mean, it's the same here in New Zealand. Like people, well, I mean, for someone I mean, I'm in a really awkward situation. But for example, if I was actually single, then it would be probably most financially beneficial to be flatting or living with other people, share house,
yeah,
basically.
yeah. And
Yeah.
even in the Philippines, right? It kind of shocked me how, coming into into adult life, right? Because it's actually culturally acceptable. If anything, it's the norm to live with your family until you get married. And so
Oh.
rent was never kind of a consideration. And I wondered if that kind of played a role in the salaries of working class white collar Filipinos, right?
Yep.
But I don't know, like I haven't looked in depth into that because I didn't work in the Philippines long enough to kind of figure it out. But it's really it's so low that you can't even rent out a space on your own in the city without having to share it with someone. And even then, the rest of the money is just like you won't be able to pay for gas. So that means the assumption is that you're going to be commuting, and commuting is terrible in the Philippines,
Yeah.
really dangerous. So if you're not like, it's just, there's so many things that I knew I wouldn't be able to make it work if I lived on my own. Like it was impossible, given that
Yeah.
kind of like, if you really have to really go down to to, I don't know, like, cause how do I even describe this? If people haven't been to Manila before, commuting expenses can be very cheap. It's just that they're not necessarily the safest, nor are they the most reliable, nor are they the cleanest. So it's especially for someone who looks very foreign like me. I don't look Filipino, and so I'm usually a target for theft. And this is reality, right? Because people who look foreign are usually ones that are targeted for these things, so it's never really
Yeah.
safe. So there's that. And then coming into Japan, right? So I was lucky enough to have been able to start with a level of salary that is kind of above the average for entry level, semi or around the same, above, just because a lot more people deal with much less, right? If you're in a smaller company.
Yeah.
But even then, even then, it was kind of, I wondered how people uh do this. It's such a basic question, like how do people?
Yeah. How do people make ends meet? And I guess that
Yeah.
I think it's just one of those things of like, I'm assuming that you grew up in a in a comfortable living situation. Like, you never had to worry about
yeah, I'm very lucky to have had that with my
making
family.
like making ends meet. You didn't have to do anything. You just had to be a kid and go to school and do
Was
kid
that the same
things.
for
And
you?
I was exactly the same. Like, I mean, when we were really young, when I was really young, then the situation was different. But as I grew older, we got more and more comfortable in our financial situation, and my mum worked really hard and as a single mum, and then met my stepdad, and things kind of got better, obviously, with two incomes. And like, yeah, I was very blessed. So I never had to worry about the things that I've heard now as an adult that kids have to worry about, like having to get a job after school to pay the family's internet bill, or things like that. Like, I've never had to worry about any of that. So I guess in a way, like, for me, I make ends meet, and I try and live the life that I've always lived. So I guess someone who perhaps came from a different situation would find my salary like more than enough, you know?
For sure.
But I mean,
Yeah.
I don't skimp on food. That's one of the things that I don't hold back on. Like, having good food and having healthy food is really important. So, you know, I'm not buying like super organic stuff. I just try and buy, you know, meat and vegetables and all of the good stuff. So, yeah, I mean, I could probably hold back on that and eat 2-minute noodles for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
You have to
but
think about your health as well. If that's-
exactly, like, that would ruin my health, and then my health bills would go up. So,
Yeah, if
you know, you've got to,
like, if you're a teenager, college student, your body can handle it. But the older you get, you really have to kind of. No, I'm not joking.
Yeah.
Because it's literally about, like, it's okay for a young person to do that, but like the older you get, you really have to consider that. So that's
Yeah.
another choice that we make, right? So
Yeah.
it's the same for me. It's just like, so at that time when I just freshly moved into Japan and I was starting on entry level, and you know, having to live on my own for the first time and living in the city center, right? Like, living in Tokyo, it was just so hard to make ends meet, because I was trying to figure out, okay, like, how much, from where should I take some money out, right? So it's obviously not rent, not utilities, what else? And then sometimes it goes, like, even like if your salary is that low, it even boils down to food, right? That's the only other thing that you can kind of reduce money from, expenses from. And it's kind of sad, right? Because okay, so we're gonna eat noodles or rice for a week, and then maybe just eat a little bit better on the weekends. It's kind of sad. So there's that. So I experienced that, especially when I was still starting out, and I was also working and studying Japanese at the same time. So I worked my ass off, and I was like really trying to make ends meet at that time. And then after that, I was able to find a much better paying job, but it's still it's so much better than a lot of people, of course, but it's still another kind of consideration where, you know, it wasn't the wisest choice to live close to the city center. So even though I was still in, like, Tokyo is pretty big, so I was still in Tokyo, but even then, right, it was like to be able to match, let's say the 30%. Like, did you know that the ideal kind of
I looked it up. It's
should be
35. Wow, they say 35.
Yeah.
Wow, someone recently said 35. But I looked up on the internet. I'm like, because when I saw, like, I was spending 60% of my salary on rent, I was like, what is the expected? And the expected is 30 to 35.
Yeah.
And that is quite a bit of money. But 30% is what they expect you to pay on your rent. But so I'm paying double that.
Yeah, but it's because Jonathan had to live away, right? If you
So the place that we rent is ideal for two people. 100%. So when he comes back home, he lives from home, like, we're going to be, you know, we'll be fine. But it is just the awkward situation that I'm kind of in at the moment, which is, and Jonathan did encourage me to get someone into their house. And I'm like, I've lived so long on my own and in my own company. Like, I don't know if I could do it. And then he also comes home on the weekends, and he'll be here on the holidays, and then there'll be 3 people in the house, and it's not really a 3-person house. And so there's all these kind of awkward things, and then you've got the cat to consider, and he doesn't like other people, and and like, we've got no parking space for another car. There's just no parking on our street as well, and like most people have their own car, so It's just a whole bag of worms, and I'm like, I don't know if I can, like, the stress of having to deal with that
Yeah.
versus the financial stress was something I had to weigh up, and I had to go, being comfortable in my own space, paying a little extra, and I can afford it, I think I'd rather that than logistically trying to get someone else in and then worrying about them paying their part of the rent and all this other shit that I just can't be bothered with.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, sorry, I got distracted.
Yeah,
Let's
it's
cut
alright.
that out. This is 34. Let me write that down. 34. So she's doing her laundry. Cut out. Yeah. Okay, sorry, you have to cut out 2 parts, but
It's all good.
where were we? So living expenses, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, I think like so, but that's also another thing, right? Like even as two people living together and trying to kind of make it work, it can really kind of take a toll just as soon as one person pulls out of the living situation, right? And
Yeah.
it's kind of sad because a lot of our like the boomers and also our parents' generation. What do you call our parents' generation? They're not the boomers.
Oh, okay.
right?
I looked this up.
Yeah, I'd be interested to know.
Yeah, so our parents, if they're like, if currently they're over 50 and up to like 75, 65-ish, I think, which is my parents. I don't know if that's also your parents.
Yeah,
So they're the boomers.
they're the boomers. They're boomers.
They're the boomers. Yeah.
Oh, what?
I
What's the
forget
generation
that
before
as
them?
as I age, everyone else age. So I'm just still like, oh, maybe they are boomers, and like people are getting, like the boomers are shifting, like as we shift. Anyway, so our grandparents, if we're about the same generational thing, the generation above baby boomers is the silent generation, I think.
The what?
The silent generation.
Silent.
I don't know how.
generation.
I don't know how they got that. I don't know if it's
Is it because they
Yeah.
went through the war?
possibly, but I'm not 100% sure. That's kind of where my history kind of knocks off. But then you've got baby boomers. Obviously, baby boomers have a lot of babies.
I'm surprised they're
And-
called boomers. Is it because they were born right at
Because of the baby boom,
Yeah.
like a boom of like.
Oh, from the silent generation. They're the babies from. Is that right?
Oh, maybe they are the babies. No, I feel like the baby boomers.
No, they didn't
Oh,
live
maybe
through the
they-
war. Our parents didn't live through the war.
No, as in like our grandparents. Oh, I don't know. This
They-
is where my history goes short.
We should look
Maybe
this up.
are they the babies boomed by our grandparents, or is it? I thought it was our parents made a lot of babies, i.e., us.
No. Did they make a lot of babies? I don't
I
think
feel like
so.
they
No,
did.
no.
No?
The
Okay.
My grandparents had more children than my parents.
Okay, let's just say then that our parents are the boomed babies, the baby boomers, of our grandparents' generation, the silent generation.
I can't.
And then, and then
The
following up
boom
with
baby.
them.
But why are they
following-
called the baby? That doesn't make sense. Let's do a little bit more research on this, and then
Let's
we'll,
come back to that.
Yeah, we'll circle back to that. But anyway, back to the topic.
generation underneath them is the Gen X.
And they were able to afford anyway. So yeah, Gen X. Okay,
Yeah.
so circling back to the topic, the boomers, right? As we've labeled them, our parents,
Yeah.
they were able to afford housing and
Yeah.
purchase their own houses at what late 20s, early 30s, and I can't even begin
Yeah.
to imagine the process of like buying my own house.
Yeah, or like affording it, and they're just like, "Oh, it cost me $19,000," or you're just like,
And I was just like,
20K.
I
That's
li-
my deposit.
I
That's like
listened
half
to-
my deposit.
I listen to all of like how much it costs to buy a house, and I'm just like,
I know.
where do you even get that money? And
But
then
it's not just like 20K in our money. Like
Yeah.
it because of inflation and how it hasn't equally like evened out. They'd be
Yeah.
like, "Oh, back in my day, I got paid $7 an hour or whatever."
yes,
But
Inflation.
actually, with
God.
inflation, that's still like $20 an hour, which is our minimum wage, and we still can't make ends meet. So it's
actually that's another thing, right? Like I think it's I mean the level of how much it's changed will vary per country, but I mean the general trend here is that there's inflation almost in every single country around the world, and salaries have pretty much stayed the same unless you're in a very new industry like tech. And I think that's and I want to dive into that a little bit later, but the salary differences, right? And which will obviously affect your lifestyle. And so like anyway, I have so much opinions on that. But anyway, so on the inflation end, it's just I feel like it's so unfair that having a home is a basic right, and people are homeless, but even then, right, like it's just if you are at a salary range where you're living paycheck to paycheck, even as a white collar worker, right, like it's very hard to save unless you are working in a very good company or have a very good position in a specific company, right? Like if you're the average kind of white collar worker, it's still very hard to save. And so, sometimes the line is very thin of like if you're not able to save and then you don't get to pay rent, you're gonna get kicked out, and now you're homeless if you don't have like a family to turn to. And it's really, really sad. Like
and that's what's happening a lot here in New Zealand, especially in America too. They're just struggling a lot with that. But I want to jump back a little bit, because it's not so much like owning a home as a right, it's just the right to shelter.
Exactly.
Like everyone has the right to shelter, and that for some people renting is an inevitability for the rest of their lives, and that's okay. Like there's nothing wrong with that. It's just it just seems crazy that someone with double incomes, two fairly good, like not really well above, but above minimum wage workers can't save enough to buy a house. Like that's where it kind of goes over my head. I'm just like I just don't get it. Like how are we ever supposed to and I mean that's how you build wealth, right? Most people buy houses to build wealth because it's an asset that then should appreciate over time. It'll go up in value basically. So it's how a lot of people build their wealth, and that's their wealth going into retirement. So so it's tricky.
And also on that note, right, like I was watching a documentary on this where sometimes buying your own house can actually chain you to it's because it's debt, right? If you don't, I'm pretty sure a lot of people, even the ones who were able to buy houses, have not fully paid that amount, right? And it's like a consistent debt, and it's kind of, it chains people to that debt, because like it will take several years, maybe 20 years, 30 years to be able to fully...
Most mortgages are about 35 years.
And it's just, what if you lose your job at some point in time, and then you're just like, you're going to be behind on payments, and it's just, it boggles my mind how it's just, it seems like such a far dream for so many. And I kind of, I realized that, and look, I'll be honest, that's probably the reason that I didn't put towards... So we have a thing called a KiwiSaver. It's basically like an investment scheme for people for retirement, but you can also bring it out for your first house. I never put anything into KiwiSaver when I was pre-Japan because I needed every dollar I could to save to get to Japan. And in my mind, I was like, I don't think I'm ever going to be able to afford a house anyway. And I'm probably not ever going to be able... I don't know if I really want to buy here in New Zealand. Like, like it does tie me to the country. But things kind of changed when I came home, and I was like, I really probably should be putting towards a house, at least retirement. And it's kind of become more of a, I would really like to buy a house. And my mindset's changed, and so I'm putting a lot more into that, which is probably why my income is kind of on the line. Like I'm sure if I pulled my KiwiSaver back, I would have a bit more extra money in my pocket, but then I wouldn't have enough to buy a house. So, I'm doing the right thing but it's just going to take time. But, like, I don't know. I jump back and forth. I'm like, do I really want to buy a house? But then I think about it, and like what pretty much everyone has said is like, well, you pay 300 and something bucks a week on rent. If you got the right house, you could halve that payment. Like,
our neighbors next door, literally in the exact same situation, it's like a little flat unit. Everyone has the same thing. They pay half what we do on rent and mortgage. So, and that goes back into their pocket, because that's their asset.
Yeah.
Whereas we're paying this much on rent and it's just wasted money,
Yeah.
So when you look at it that way, then yeah, it really does make sense to have a house but it's just getting to there. It's like, it was 20%, it was 20K and now it's 40K and now it's 60K. Like, and this is in the last 2 years. We're like, oh yeah, we can probably afford it if we had 30K in the bank. Nope. 2 years later, we can probably afford it if we have 60K in the bank, and it's going to take us 5-6 years to get there. So, like,
actually,
it's that sort of stress, eh?
Yeah. And they're saying that it's not even, I mean, it's a wise decision at some point, but there are also like lifestyle factors that affect that, right? If you are consistently traveling, it's not gonna be the best investment, right? So the rise of the nomads, right? Digital nomads, where you never know if you're still gonna be living in the same space, or even not even. I'm not a digital nomad, but I'm not sure if I'll be living in Tokyo for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Things can change. I mean,
that
I think
said, it is an asset that you can rent out too, which is what we've considered too.
Yeah.
Like, and it'll be here when we get home. So if we do decide to go overseas and we have a house, then yeah.
So there's that. It's just it's a like I don't know if I can afford a house. But
can you even buy in Tokyo?
You
being
can.
A foreigner?
If you have, you can.
Wow.
Even without your PR, but it's gonna be, you won't be able to take out a loan if you by PR,
gotcha.
permanent residency, just for our listeners. But so there's that. I don't know. I think my personal choices are, until I've decided that I want to stay here forever. I'm not gonna think about it, but it's not as if I'm in a position to think about it right now. I barely have any savings because of my initial salary. But speaking of that, like I moving on to kind of how salaries shift between your, I think, like, it's between your kind of industry profession and industry. So we know this, right? For example, I mean, I think doctors deserve as much, and nurses, right? I think they deserve as much as they can get, because they are literally our heroes. They help save our lives. I hope so. I hope, like, I'm not talking about the terrible people, terrible doctors who malpractice. We're talking about the real heroes who are the ones who are actually helping us in so many aspects of our lives, not just when we're sick. So they deserve that. But what are the typical jobs that you think would earn money, at least in the generation of our parents? For me as an Asian, it's either you're a doctor, a lawyer. What else? Is there anything else aside from that? Like and then after that, maybe you build your own business, where the top 3 choices of making money, and then the rest are just like, you're gonna be, or a business person, right? But then it's the corporate ladder. Anywhere else aside from that would be kind of just probably you're gonna end up with a mid-tier salary. How about, like, what's it like in New Zealand? Like, what are the professions that earn a lot of money there?
Doctors, obviously. Yeah. Doctors come out with a ton of student debt because they do so many years in medical school. But they do get paid pretty well. Nurses, unfortunately, still sort of fighting for the bare minimum, which is it's pretty shitty.
So sad.
Teachers are the same. It's kind of they do get up there, but they're capped because they're paid by the government. So they once they've done a certain number of years, they're kind of capped.
Teachers earn a lot there? That's so interesting.
Teachers earn a lot?
Yeah, because you mentioned, did you say teachers?
Yeah, well, they don't earn. I would say they probably earn more, especially recently. I think they earn more than other places around the world, but they're capped. So, in other words, once they've done so many years of experience, unless they move into like a principal role, which is more of a management role, they're kind of capped at what they can earn by the government. Or if they go into private school, then their salary gets bumped up. But obviously, if you go back to a public school, then your salary would drop back down again. So they're kind of capped. Whereas tech industry, obviously, developers, anything like that, their salaries can go way up. Any big corporates, if you're in financial corporates, banks, anything like that, you can make a pretty good amount of money in like a mid-level management role. Team leader, or director, those sort of things.
So these are the more modern kind of perceptions of because the ones I mentioned a while ago were like from my parents' generation, right? That's what kind of they were. That's what they
I would
told
say
us.
it was about the same. Yeah, it was like doctors, lawyers, anyone in finance did really well, still does really well. Anyone in finance does really well. Freaking people who make money off other people's money, it just blows my mind.
I mean, I don't think. I mean, it. Because I don't know how that works. But in any case, it's shifted nowadays where because new jobs have popped up with the tech boom, right? And whereas in our parents' generation, it's probably going to be maybe maximum, right? A corporate job, anything finance related, doctor, lawyer, right? Business or build your own business, but then that wasn't a guarantee. And now it's like it's shifted, and it's both a good thing and a bad thing, but I feel like there are also people who have been left in between, right? So it's shifted in a way that, for example, engineers and developers are going to earn a lot of money. If you work in tech, you're probably going to earn a lot of money, unless you're a venture,
builders.
Right?
Builders earn a lot of money here in New Zealand.
Really?
Even in construction. Yeah, construction, like...
That's so interesting. You mean the management level, or actually literally the ones who go in the field and build?
Builders, I think, actually make a bit of money. It depends.
The ones that actually build it? Like, you're not talking about the managerial level kind of...
No, I'm talking about actual builders.
That's so interesting.
Because a lot of them work on contract, and contracts can be quite good.
Oh,
so
I think
people like electricians, any like apprentice type roles, builders, electricians,
they earn
plumbers.
a lot of money there in New Zealand.
Yeah,
That's interesting.
You can earn quite a bit of money because a lot of them do contract and freelance, so their hourly rates like 60. I don't know if it's $100 an hour, but it could get up there.
Yeah,
depending on who you how you sell it yourself.
in my next life, if I was born.
I consider it. I watch builders all the time, and I'm like, that could be kind of fun. You pay $80 an hour to do that. But then I think about the physical toll, and I'm like,
I was just like, I was going to say in my next life, if I were ever born as a man, and I don't want to put that limit. I'm pretty sure there are female builders. It's just like, physical capacity, my own preferences in physical capacity. That's so interesting. But anyway, so driving back to the point, I feel like sometimes if you didn't make, because we are, with the current educational system, you're kind of you're forced to make a choice on your future when you're still so young and you don't have any experience, right? You wouldn't know what, let's say, a builder would be doing day to day, or like what a lawyer would be doing day to day.
Just like, that looks like fun.
And then
or like you'll just pick it being like a lawyer. Oh yeah, that sounds like fun, and then you have to go through like the study, and you're like, I hate it.
And then what? Then you've already paid for your education. It's kind of sad, and it's not.
And you can't pivot. You can't pivot off lawyer legal.
It's very difficult.
Or law, sorry.
I mean, technically, if you're lucky and you have the grit, you're probably gonna find one, but it's difficult. Yeah. And I think in general, I think the way our systems are currently set up, especially if you're not working in tech, there's just, once you get into a particular industry, people are going to ask, so why are you shifting? And will you have it? And it's not as if they're not open to you shifting. It's just the question is, will you have enough skills to fill in this role? And it's fine. Like, there are superheroes around who are able to kind of balance studying with their full-time job. I'm not one of those people anymore. I was able to do that and study Japanese, but then I love Japan, and so it wasn't as hard. But then imagine trying to work up a skill set where like it's for work, and you have a full-time job, you're exhausted, and even then you have to live your life, right? Because what's a life if you're just like working, eating, and then studying, and then that's it. Like you also have to
Yeah.
think about living a full life, and so it's so hard to shift. And that's a thing, right? Like I was thinking real hard about this, about how, if I had, and I think if my parents had um the foresight to kind of give me advice on that, where, for example, developers will be earning so much money in 10 years, then I would have become one,
Yeah.
because it would have
Yeah.
made my life so much easier in that aspect, where I never had to struggle to go up, so like at the start, right, the corporate ladder, as because I think developers, engineers earn a pretty good amount, even
They're
from the
still in they're
even
still in high demand. Yeah.
yeah, even from the very beginning, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, all of these things, and it's just I feel for our generation, because it's just sometimes you're just stuck in a profession, in an industry where you're not getting kind of properly compensated, and sometimes it's just, I mean, some companies probably can't afford it, especially if they're new, a small company. But it's really sad, because on the other side of the sphere, there's also the higher earners, right? The top earners, where I don't discredit them. I'm pretty sure they have worked their butts off to get there. It's just sometimes I feel like it's kind of Russian roulette, where you're really like you got lucky, you chose the right job at the right time, and you
Yeah.
found
Yep.
yourself in the right circumstances to get this.
Yeah.
And again, I so many of my friends who are in that situation have worked hard for that, and that's great. It's just sometimes, right, like you wish you had the foresight, or
Yeah.
that you were lucky enough to have chosen that job for this specific time period. So that's one of my like regrets. I wish I had studied to become a developer, then I wouldn't have had to go through so much struggle to get to a certain point.
Yeah. I mean,
But-
that's what I've told people who are like, "Oh, I
Yeah.
really want to go and work in Japan." I'm like, "Become a developer.
Yeah.
You want a guaranteed job that, like, because it doesn't require English. Most companies don't require you. Require Japanese. Like most companies, you can kind of get away with, because the whole dev team speaks English, and you don't. It's like a universal language. You don't need to speak Japanese to do a dev job. That said, to actually fit within the company and do the job, sometimes you do, but they're just so gung ho for devs, because they make things work.
Yeah.
So it's like a guaranteed job, and like I kind of shoot myself in the foot, but I just don't like. I don't know. I don't know if I don't like dev work, or if I don't know. I'm not good at it, or. But
Yeah, and that's why
yeah.
it's like.
But
it's
I'm also
such
like,
a-
but the salary.
Yeah. I mean, of course, like I would advise people to not choose choose their job based on salary, because that's gonna lead you to a very miserable life if you don't enjoy your job. Remember that your your job is gonna take up 60%, almost 60% of your life. And so I would not advise that, although I would kind of recommend that you choose a job that you like somehow, or you're kind of interested in, and then see how that fits in a higher paying industry, for example.
Yeah.
But I don't know, like I don't have the answer for this. Like literally, I wish people could have better pay, at least enough that they can kind of live a full life and not have to think about like their paycheck for every single purchase. I wish that on everyone. And I hope we make it. Like I'm pretty sure at some point, like if I believe in hard work, and that hard work can get you to success if you try. But sometimes when like there are also situations where no matter how hard you work, it never really,
You're against the wall.
yeah. So I hope that your hard work pays off, that everyone else listening to this podcast, that their hard work pays off, because
and I do believe it does as
Yeah.
well. I think it will. It's just I do feel like we are a generation that is just being struck by like a lot of hard barriers and stuff, and Like, I really hope that Gen Z have it a little bit easier, but like if we get
Yeah.
really deep and dark and miserable, I don't think they're gonna have it much easier than we do. They've got a whole planet to try and save. So
That's true. And also just like
yeah.
them being hit by the pandemic, a lot of them are
In their
like,
prime years,
yeah, it's kind of like my friend and I were having this conversation. It's kind of sad because, my uni days were one of the most fun years of my life. I've met some of my best friends from there,
Yeah.
and they don't have that right now.
Yeah,
Like the
or that's
pandemic.
been ruined by the pandemic.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like literally like three. So it's gonna be, we're working up to the third year very soon. Like it's this
Yeah.
year, right? If things don't end yet, then
yeah,
that's, oh my God, that's like they're halfway through. Let's say they start uni during the pandemic, so they're halfway through their uni days already. It's crazy.
yeah. It's quite sad, yeah. And I guess when you're that age as well, I remember being 19, 20, 21, even 22, like it all feels so much more than it is. Like time
Yeah.
as you get older is, it kind of like, 2-3 years is like, whatever.
Yeah.
Because you're working, it's pretty mundane,
Yeah.
sadly. So, but for them, there's so much change happening. You go flatting, you do the whole experience, you do the uni things, you got parties. Like, it's just so much going on in those years that to have it all kind of taken away from you is pretty, yeah, it's pretty sad. And I do feel that it's going to come back to bite them someday. And like maybe it's like maybe when they hit their 25s or even closing on 30, they kind of like, they do something to make that special instead. I don't know. Like I don't know. I don't know what I would do. It would be, yeah. It's pretty sad. But yeah, kind of grim, isn't it? It's a bit of a grim topic, isn't it?
Yeah, but okay, to just give our listeners and even the two of us some hope. So
Please.
So two things I want to kind of put like two facets to before I end this. But one, I sometimes life just hits you hard, and no matter how hard you're working, you don't really kind of get to that space of comfort. And this has happened for a lot of people, and I feel for them because some of our hardest workers aren't being fully compensated well, right? Depending where you're living as well, like, right, nurses aren't getting fairly compensated in some countries, and it's really sad. So so as much as I want to say hard work will get you there, I can't guarantee it. But on the other aspect, the more positive way of looking at this is that do a lot of research, make moves to, like, for example, if the industry, if you find that being a nurse in your country isn't working out, you will never get fairly compensated, then consider moving to a country that does, is one option, for example.
Yeah.
Or completely make movements toward career change, right? The internet has made it, a lot of information more accessible. You can get free courses, and you can actually become a developer if you are able to make a lot of projects on your own. So you don't even have to go to school for that. There are online courses for that. So it's actually very possible. So what I recommend for this, and I think I have the credentials to talk about this because I've shifted between different kinds of industries because I wanted a better life for myself. So I did my research. So I want to tell everyone that it's not impossible to pull yourself out of your current situation, but that's the key, right? You have to kind of do it smart. You have to be smart.
Yep.
You have do it smartly, rather. You have to kind of do your research on, okay, what industries can I move my skills into, and does that industry pay well? Is it known to pay well? And if you just seek out all of the possible options that you have, and then you make your pathway toward that. Okay, so part 2 of this discussion on for next week's episode, and we are going to talk about so just work-life balance, like, because I feel like we're also very time poor, our generation.
Yes.
Because of the tech boom. I'd kind of, anyway, more on that next time. And also just the hustle culture and
Leisure, guilt, that sort of thing.
yeah. So I think these are gonna be fun topics. It's gonna be bleak again, but we're gonna try our
Yay,
best to give
I'm
you
so
some.
excited.
We're gonna insert some hope in there at the end.
Okay, I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. All right. So thank you so much for listening, and we hope to see you again soon.
Thanks, guys. See you later.
Bye.